Hey, we're back after a 2-week break.
Woo!
It's been a really crazy 2 weeks, and we're going to have to talk really fast and not go in depth, and we're just all really sad about it, but we're jumping right in.
Okay, so since we last talked, there was a Super Bowl. It was held in Minneapolis. The Eagles won, spoiler.
And if you don't know that, and you're living under a
which
rock.
was cool. They played the Patriots. The Patriots have won like 5 in the last decade or so. And the Philadelphia Eagles have never won a Super Bowl. So it's cool for them. There's typically a big parade in the home city after, and there was a huge one in Philly. It was awesome.
But then there was a lot of ransacking, and they were burning things in the streets and
they kind of went
climbing
a little
the
crazy.
lampposts and
But I thought it was cool. Like the schools in Philadelphia all closed for the parade, so like all the staff and students could go and like witness this historic moment. I was like, that's so cool. I love like community rallying like that. Like, yeah, close the schools because half of them are gonna like. Not go to school anyways. Yeah, so that was cool. Justin Timberlake did the halftime performance, which I thought was good. A lot of people hated it, but I pleasantly liked it. It was good. It had a lot of dancing and.
Heard it was a Prince tribute.
There was a Prince tribute. There was some chatter that there was going to be a Prince hologram, which apparently Prince hated the idea of holograms, so all his fans were like super angry about the idea of having a hologram. But they had like this big sheet. And they just, like, projected Prince, like, performing on there, and Justin, like, sang a duet with him. It was actually really tastefully done.
Oh. Huh.
So they did a really nice Prince tribute. It was also interesting in, like, the era of Me Too and Harvey Weinstein that they chose Justin Timberlake because of the whole Janet Jackson incident. And they chose, like, the man and not...
The woman.
The woman who, like... There's a whole narrative about how, like... Justin's career took off and Janet's career plummeted, and like there's the whole thing about that.
Yeah.
If you're interested, there's tons of pieces, you can go read them. But it was an interesting choice in like the era of Me Too to have Justin Timberlake just because of his history with the Super Bowl. But he didn't reference it at all. He just did a nice, clean performance, like no mishaps. It was just like he just focused on the song and dance.
Yeah.
So.
And then This Is Us broke everyone's hearts.
Also, during the Super Bowl, there was a very clever ad. So, I don't know if you saw... I think you mentioned you didn't.
Yeah, I didn't watch anything.
Leading up to the weeks of the Super Bowl, there was this trailer for a movie called Dundee, like of the Crocodile Dundee. It had, like, Chris Hemsworth in it. And it was, like, this Crocodile Dundee's son, like, came back to Australia, and he wasn't at all like his dad. And, like, I thought this was a legit movie. Like, they made trailers and everything.
Oh, I think I saw glimpses of this. Yeah. Okay,
and then they released, like, a longer trailer, which had, like, every famous Australian in it. Hugh Jackman, Russell Crowe, Margot Robbie, Isla Fisher, like, all the famous Australian actors. Come to find out, this was a fake movie trailer, and it was really a promotional ad for Australian tourism.
Excellent.
They finally released an ad that, like... Chris Hemsworth is, like, talking about all the great things about Australia, like beautiful beaches and wineries and blah, 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 blah. And then the other guy's like, wait, this isn't a movie trailer. And Chris Hemsworth's like, no, this isn't. This is an ad for Australia tourism. So, like, kudos to them. Like, I fell for it. I thought that it was a real movie.
They might have to make it a real movie now.
So, kudos to them. It was very clever advertising. That's great. There's been some Star Wars news.
There has been some Star Wars news. So, from what I understand, and I didn't look too closely into this, two of the Game of Thrones creators have been tasked with creating a new Star Wars movie trilogy.
I think
that sounds right.
I think it's
a whole other trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and on top of that,
this is an addition to
Rian Johnson was tasked with doing another trilogy that's separate from anything that's already existent. So I think we've got 3 trilogies in the works now. Plus the prequel, the Star Wars stories.
I just want to say real quick, and this is from the vantage point of me, like, not knowing anything about Star Wars and not really being a huge fan. Like, at what point do we have Star Wars fatigue? Like, at what point is too much?
I don't know.
I don't know, but maybe to the super fans like you, like, you're gonna eat it all up.
My thing, well, and I'm really cautious about these, like, Star Wars trilogies and shows that take place outside of the Star Wars universe we know and love. So the point of, like, Rian Johnson's trilogy is that he's imagining up a whole new society that is in no way connected to the society and the culture and the history that we already know. So I'm kind of cautious about that because, half of the draw of Star Wars isn't just that, like, you have you have these stories in space in this society. It's the thing that you love about it is the characters and the places and the character developments and like the villains that we've all come to love and the fact that we bring back. I mean, I don't think that the films would be quite as big if we hadn't brought back like Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill and stuff like that. So I think that I'm super cautious, but you're right. I don't know when we reach the stage of Star Wars fatigue. I think you're gonna have Star Wars fans who go to everything, no matter what. I don't know that they're gonna be super fans of the new stuff.
Is this just the Fantastic Beasts of the Star Wars?
In some ways.
Yeah, I mean, the same could be said about Marvel movies. Like, how many of those are being made?
My gosh.
Like, a bajillion.
Yeah.
You know, at what point...
I got fatigue of those ones.
At what point is enough? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the fans take it. Like,
right.
Will it be received like the prequels? Because those were, like, widely panned as...
They were received well, but the stories were awful. So then they weren't received well. Does that make sense? Like, they were highly anticipated. That's what I was looking for. They were highly anticipated, but then, like, fell flat because George Lucas can't write a story. He also, he just can't write. He didn't write the original trilogy either. He came up with the concepts and then other people wrote them and directed them. He, like, had the, and, like, A New Hope, which he did write, went through, like, 1 million rewrites to try and get it to the point where it would be acceptable to somebody who would want to see it and want to read it in order to finance it. Anyway, okay, off topic. So the other thing that happened is that during the Super Bowl, there was like this teaser for a teaser trailer for the Solo movie, which was like this 30-second, like, really short teaser trailer. And, like, Han is talking to an Imperial person, like, he's signing up to be a pilot and go to pilot school and stuff like that. And then they were like, and tomorrow we're releasing the real teaser trailer. So it was really cool, actually, once you watch them both side by side, because there isn't very much overlap content. Like, there's very, very, very little overlap content between the two trailers, which they very easily could have been like, this is the first 30 seconds, and then we'll give you the full minute and a half tomorrow. But they were different, so that was cool. It looks pretty good. I am actually super excited about it. It looks like Maz might be in it, Maz Kanata from... from number 8 and a little bit from, or number 7 and a little bit from number 8, because like Han introduces Rey to Maz and somehow they have to know each other, so I think that's cool that they're pulling her.
I always thought that was the weirdest part of Force Awakens. Like, how in the world do these two know each other?
I think that they're bringing them into this. So
that would be smart.
I've heard some conjectures that this is going to be a heist movie because in the second trailer, like, this guy is pulling together a crew. So we have Lando and Chewie and Han and I think Maz, I'm not sure, and some droid and a woman whose name I can't remember right now. She looks so... Oh, she's in Me Before You. She's the actress from Me Before You. And so anyway, it just looks really good. It comes out on Memorial Day. This is the first time that they've been actually able to pull off a May release date, because all of the other ones so far have been set to be released in May and then ended up getting pushed back to December. So
May the 4th be with you.
I wish they were doing it on May the 4th, but they're doing it on the 25th.
Oh.
I know. Like, why not play on that?
Of course.
They usually do their big Star Wars convention on the 4th.
That's true.
All right, moving on. This one's yours. I don't know anything about this.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So I heard chatter that Joaquin Phoenix is going to be cast as the Joker in, like, a Joker standalone prequel. And per DC Films, they're going to have 2 actors who will be playing Joker at the same time. Jared Leto, from what I've read, Jared Leto will still be the Joker in, like, from Suicide Squad, and, like, this won't have effect on that.
DC is so
weird. Like, it's very interesting that DC's choosing versus to have, like, not have, like, one character versus, like, Marvel, like, all of the characters are one, and, like, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and their TV shows, they don't cross over, versus, like, DC, where you have one actor, Grant Gustin, who plays the Flash in the TV show, and then you have Ezra Miller play the Flash in the movies, and it's kind of confusing. But supposedly this movie is like a Joker origin movie, which I think is so fascinating. Like, Joker is one of the most fascinating villains, probably of all comics.
He's also very, very dark.
He's very dark and very twisted, so it'd be interesting to see, like, how he got there. So I saw that headline, and I thought that was interesting. Also, on other movie news, and I do not know how I missed this, apparently, Marvel has hired someone to write a script for a Black Widow movie. Now, like, this is still in the very, very, very beginning stages, but they've apparently, like, interviewed writers and hired somebody to write the script. So, that's cool.
Somehow we missed that. It came out like a month ago.
Yeah, this came out in January. I'm like, how in the world did I miss that? Because I have been wanting a Black Widow movie since probably Avengers 1, which was 2012.
As long as I've known you.
Which has been 6 years, and Marvel has all their movies planned out for this year and next year. So if this were to happen, it probably wouldn't be until 2020 at the earliest.
Right.
But that depends on where they put it. But Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson, is just such a fabulous character and has so much untapped backstory that I'm just excited to see how this finally goes.
It would be good. Okay, so Incredibles 2, we talked about a couple weeks ago, had this, like, weird teaser trailer that was, like,
stupid. For
real, why did we hype that? They didn't hype, and they released their actual teaser trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks to be really interesting. So basically, we pick up right where we left off, and it looks like... With the Underminer, right. And it looks like Elastigirl, Mrs. Incredible, she gets to play the leading lady role here, where she's the hero, and somehow Mr. Incredible has to figure out how in the world to raise 4 children when he's never been the stay-at-home dad. Right. And Edna says a really great line in this trailer that's like, parenting is, what does she say? Like, the parent is the true hero if it's done properly or something like that. It's a really good line. So I think it'll be really interesting to, like, challenge. It'll be really interesting to see, like, family life versus hero life and how they handle that and all that good stuff. So
yeah, it'll be cool.
Yeah.
So they released this trailer during the Olympics, and as you probably know, the Winter Olympics are going on right now.
You hope.
In South Korea, and I am loving it. I am a huge Olympics fan, always have been, and I go all in, and so, like, every night I've been watching the Olympics, and it has been great. Some highlights, the opening ceremony was really good.
Yeah.
I really liked it. It was shorter, and it was concise, and it was nice. They did this, like, cool thing with drones. Do you remember when Lady Gaga did the halftime show for the Super Bowl last year?
No.
Anyways, there are all these drones, like, flying, and they, like, make shapes, but, like, these drones came together and, like, made the shape of a snowboarder, and then they, like, made the Olympic rings, and it was so cool.
That's cool.
So, I'll give you an update on the medal count as of Friday afternoon. The U.S., we're kind of lagging behind a little bit than probably people would have expected. We have 5 gold medals, 8 overall, but, like, Germany has 9 gold medals, 15 overall, and Norway has 19 medals.
Yeah, those Norwegian countries, the Netherlands regions, just end up doing really well.
The U.S., our 5 golds we have smashed it in snowboarding. Like, we have done so awesome. We won men and women's slopestyle with Red Gerard, this, like, unknown 17-year-old won.
Who fell asleep binge watching Netflix the night before, woke up late, almost missed his round. His bus to go up to his thing.
It's a great
lost
story.
His coat, and then, like, swore on TV. Like,
yeah, it was great. And then we won men and women's half pipe, which Chloe Kim, 17-year-old, is awesome. If you don't know who she is, go look her up. She's amazing.
She's the
daughter
of South Korean immigrants.
Yeah, she has a cool backstory. I wish we had more time to talk about it. So go, like, look her up. And, of course, Shaun White won, which was, like, way cool redemption story for him.
Because he fell in Sochi. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
I just remembered how.
So he got gold in Torino, gold in Vancouver, like, got fourth in Sochi. And so, like, he was really trying to come back.
Yeah.
And so he won the gold. And then Michaela Schifrin won a gold in one of the Alpine events. Slalom? Or Super G?
It's not her event. It was something else because she fell. She
got 4th in her signature event. And
which is slalom, giant slalom.
All the skiing events, like,
I can't.
Are like Super G, slalom, giant slalom, or, like, I think it was slalom. That's the one Her signature event is the one with the poles, where they, like, hit the poles.
Yeah.
I think that's slalom. And giant slalom was the one she won gold in, I think.
Okay.
So that's cool. But there have been some disappointments. Like you said, Mikaela Shiffrin didn't win her signature event, which she, like, always wins.
Yeah.
Lindsay Jacobellis in snowboard cross didn't win the gold. She got to the final but got 4th. It was so sad. Side note, if you don't know what snowboard or ski cross is, go look it up. It's awesome. It's my favorite event.
And then Nathan Chen.
Oh,
from
Nathan
what I saw
Chen.
everywhere. He was he's our Salt Lake
last.
homeboy.
He is. He's a Salt Lake homeboy. He loves the Utah Jazz.
And he's the one who gets like 4 quads in every short program.
He had so much hype going into this. He's known as the Quad King.
Yeah.
And side note, there's so much to talk about here. The whole figure skating with the scoring and the quads, like, there's a whole narrative about that. Go look that up. Yeah. But Nathan Chen was like, had super high expectations, and he stumbled in the team event short program. And then the men's short program was last night, Thursday night, and he fell on every single one of his jumps. And it was so sad. And so that put him down into 17th place. He's 30 points behind the guy from Japan who's awesome. He's the
good. Defending gold medalist.
Mm-hmm.
The Japanese, not Nathan Chen.
He's really good. So it was so sad. Nathan Chen's out, like, definitely out of medal contention. There's no way he can make up 30 points behind. But a lot of people on Twitter and online are saying, you know what? He's only 18, which he is. He's only 18 years old. Like, he'll be around for a while. Like, he's got a bright future. I think he'll be...
Like, the woman who just won pairs, she's been to 5 Olympics. And they're from Germany, and they just posted the highest pair score last night. So he will definitely be back.
Okay. Figure skating is one of my favorite events to watch, and pairs is my favorite. It's just so graceful and artistic. I love watching the pairs.
I love ice dancing for the fact that it takes pairs and smooths out everything.
So go watch the gold medal winning pairs program. It's really good. So yeah, Nathan Chen, I think Beijing 2022, I think he'll be back, and I think he'll be stronger and more confident. Yeah. And I don't think we've seen the last of Nathan Chen.
Obviously not. No.
So there's only been 1 week of Olympics, and there's another whole week to come. So we'll see.
We're halfway through.
Ladies figure skating is like towards the very end, and that's always like the big marquee event of the Olympics.
Yeah.
The U.S. has 3 entries, so we'll see how we do. We're not really super favored to win a medal, but
if what's her name? Who
Mirai Nagasu landed the triple axel, which is a big deal, which we don't have time to talk about.
It's only been landed twice before, Tanya Harding and someone else an American woman. It's only been landed twice before an American woman competition, and then I think it's only been a couple of times in the Olympics. But this is the first time that an American woman had landed it in the Olympics.
Is that just on the women's side? Because the men do it.
Yeah, the men are doing quads, so that's like the step up, which is like...
And women don't do quads?
No.
A lot of women don't get to the triple. Well, to that specific.
So, like, a triple axel, and there's so many, like, different jumps. There's salchows, and toe loops, and flips, and which that's a whole thing in and of itself to go explore. But...
Can't keep track.
A triple axel is like a forward-facing takeoff, and you're 3.5 rotations in the air, versus a quad is 4 full rotations in the air.
You land backwards in a triple axel.
Yeah.
So. Okay. We really don't have time for this.
We don't.
Okay.
The Olympics are awesome. Go watch it. Now we're going to talk less about like the sports and move on to like the geopolitical issues and things happening around the Olympics because boy is there a lot.
Oh my gosh. Because it's in Korea. It's in South Korea. Mm-hmm. And so you have the whole North Korea thing, and we've talked plenty of times on here about the shift from the whole dialogues between North Korea and South Korea and how North Korea has sent a delegation full of this huge amount of cheerleaders and the couple of competitors they have and their joint hockey team. So I think we start at the beginning. So walk us through the opening ceremony stuff that happened.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about some of the stuff that happened after.
So Mike Pence was selected to head the U.S. delegation. He stopped in Alaska and Japan and then went to South Korea. Now I'm going to back up just a tiny bit. Before the opening ceremony, there was this reception for diplomatic VIPs.
Yeah.
And Mike Pence like showed up for like 5 minutes and like left, and his reason why he was gonna go spend the time with the American athletes, which could be seen good or bad depending on how you view it. But like he didn't. The North Korean head of state, I can't remember his name, like the 90-year-old guy, was there.
The who? Sorry, what?
So North Korea sent like their nominal head of state. He's like a 90-year-old man.
I don't know of him.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I think his name is like Kim.
I'll look it up.
Anyways, he's like their ceremonial head of state. He's not the supreme leader, but he's like their ceremonial head of state. And then they also sent Kim Jong-un's sister, but at this like reception, it was only for like head of states. So like he went, but like Trump didn't shake his hand, or not Trump, Pence didn't shake his hand, and like briefly skipped out on that reception. So that angered a lot of people. Then at the opening ceremony, Moon Jae-in, president of South Korea, was there. Vice President Pence and Karen Pence were there, and then the head of state of North Korea, I don't know his name. What's his name?
Sorry, who are you talking about? Kim Yong-nam, who is he heads the parliament, so he's head of state.
He's like their ceremonial head of state. Yeah, him, and then Kim Jong-un's sister, which is like she's a very influential advisor to her brother.
Yeah, she's also higher than him and more respected in the DPRK in the party structure. So yeah.
So like it was a big deal that she showed up, and she and President Moon of South Korea shook hands, which was like super historic, super interesting. She's the first member of like the ruling Kim family to go to the South since the Korean War.
Her name is Kim Yo-jong.
Kim Yo-jong. Okay, thank you. And like, so that was a big deal. Like, and the Korean War was in the 50s, people. Like,
which
it's been like 80 years.
But it never ended. It ended in an armistice, so technically we're still at war. They're still at war.
So she was the first of the Kim family to go to South Korea, which is a big deal in and of itself. Like, the fact that she was there was just so crazy, and that's exactly what President Moon was trying to push, peace Olympics and trying to bring people together.
Yeah.
So there was that. That was a big moment. Also, when the Korea...
But Pence didn't shake her hand? Did you say something like
Pence never interacted with her. They were like... She was sitting like behind him and like 2 seats over. Like, they were so close. But it wasn't like they were avoiding each other, but they didn't like purposely interact.
Yeah, well, this thing...
So it's like this
the
weird...
The thing about the
like...
Olympics, too, is that this is like a diplomatic... This is not, like, the Olympics aren't just, like, let's get together and all compete against each other. It's a diplomatic, like, it's
arena.
This huge diplomatic thing. And they are totally, like, the United States is totally missing an opportunity. In my mind, and in a lot of other foreign policy analysts' minds. Like, we're missing an opportunity to develop a dialogue, to pretend to be friends, which, you know, is all diplomacy. But like Stu was about to say, during the opening ceremonies, when the Korean team walked in, Korean team. So they walked in together. It was North and South Korea, and South Korea are our allies. Like, the state is our allies. Pence didn't stand, and nor did he clap. So, like, first of all, South Korea's our allies. Second of all, they're our host. Like, this is, like, you're burning bridges.
Yeah,
all over the place.
A lot of people thought it was viewed as like very cold and like very shrewd and off-putting to people. But like, it was a really cool moment to see the Koreas marching together under a unified Korean flag.
And the national anthem they played is a old folk song called Arirang, which you can find on your local Spotify station, because I listened to way too much of it 2 years ago.
So that was like the opening ceremony. Yeah. And then tell us what's happened since then.
So the biggest thing in the news since then is that Kim Jong-un, who is the supreme leader person, I don't think he's called the supreme leader, I can't remember what he's called, of North Korea, has invited President Moon Jae-in of South Korea to visit Pyongyang, the capital city of North Korea. That's a lot of Koreas, but anyway. So, and this should happen, if it happens, will happen after the Olympics by a little margin, and Moon Jae-in hasn't said whether he's going or not, whether he's accepting that invitation, but it's likely that he will. That is seen as a calculated move on Kim Jong-un's part to, like, further drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea, because South Korea really does kind of, the goal of both Koreas is as a unified Korea. They both just have wildly different ideas of what that looks like. but they both feel that the whole of the Korean peninsula belongs to them as a government, under their certain rule of government. And so it would be unsurprising if Moon Jae-in were to completely disregard this, especially since he ran on a platform of unifying Korea and increasing the dialogue between North Korea and South Korea.
Now, if he would go, this is the first visit from a South Korean president since what was it, 2000?
I don't.
It's the first. Sure. It would be the first visit of a South Korean president in a lot of years.
A long time, right? And all of this is super surprising because North Korea and South Korea, they have this direct line across the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, and so 2 years ago, they have this red telephone pretty much that they would talk every day and just call up and talk to each other through this phone in the shacks on either side of the DMZ. And then one day 2 years ago, the North just stopped picking up the phone. So they haven't been in contact for 2 years, and then the dialogue started a couple of weeks before the Olympics. So the big question is this going to continue? And Moon Jae-in going to Pyongyang could be a big signal that it will be.
Also, the IOC, the president of the IOC, Thomas Bach, is going to visit North Korea after
Really?
This. So a lot of Western or Western allied leaders are starting to go to North Korea. So people like Moon Jae-in and people who want increased dialogue with North Korea are hoping that the Olympics and all this is a period of thawing and and this will lead to more dialogue and more engagement. Possibly denuclearization.
Yeah, but that's a pipe dream. And that's the problem with Pence and Trump's idea is that they both are saying, we're not going to talk to North Korea unless denuclearization is on the table. And now that they have the ability to develop these nuclear weapons and they've got them, right? They are 2 steps away from being able to launch it to the United States. They could launch an ICBM. Not giving you false hope that they can't get you yet, but they can launch an ICBM. They just can't shrink the nuclear device onto the tip of it. Where was I going with that? Nope, it's gone. Anyway, so there's no chance for denuclearization, and so that's the downfall of the United States administration right now is that's our sticking point. So we can't even get to negotiations because North Korea isn't willing to put that on the table. All right, I think that's it for the geopolitics for now.
Yeah,
for the Olympics.
I think so.
Okay,
it's been very interesting how this all has played into it. I mean, there's more we could go into about Russia and stuff.
There's so much more.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 weeks ago now, it's been a while. So there's this huge controversy over Devin Nunes, who I think we talked about briefly last time we met, how he had written this memo about the Russian investigation, and the committee had voted to release the memo, and it was on Trump's desk to see if he would declassify it and allow it to be released. So he did the next Monday. He released it. I read it, and I don't know what's so worrisome about it, because I'm reading it going, wow, there's actually not very much in here. And what is in there, we already kind of knew. We already had an idea about it. And the thing that's really interesting is that the claim that the Republicans are trying to make with reference to this is that the whole FBI investigation, the FBI began investigating the Trump campaign and the Russia involvement in the campaign, to subvert the campaign, to subvert the election, is based on the Steele dossier, which is the dossier paid for by is it DNC? I think the Democratic National Party paid for it, and also some other people paid for it too that were associated with Republican people. Anyway, so this dossier that's put together by this ex-foreign service officer person foreign British service officer. I can't remember exactly what his title was. So there's this whole controversy around it. Yeah, Christopher Steele, but I can't remember what his title was in the British government. Mm-hmm. So there's this whole thing about it, and they're and the government's investigation is based on this dossier, and this dossier can't be verified, and also it was paid for by a Democratic group, so it's like got this political leaning. And really, they try to make that argument, but at the very end of their memo, they're like, and the FBI investigation is based off of George Papadopoulos and some things that were going on with him, and George Papadopoulos isn't even in the Steele dossier, from what we understand. So, like, there's a whole lot of nothing there. But there's this whole hype about it, and allows the Republicans to kind of shape the narrative in a lot of ways. The Democrats on that committee in the House wrote their own rebuttal memo that is quite a bit longer. And from what they're saying, what Adam Schiff is saying, Devin Nunes' counterpart in the Democratic Party on that committee, what he is saying is that it provides a more complete picture, because the Republican memo was 4 pages, and it wasn't even 4 full pages. It was 3 and like 2 paragraphs pages. And it picks from this like huge amount of information that's like 40, 50, 60, 70 pages long, something like that. And so the Democrats say we've done this longer, more inclusive memo trying to set the record straight. The committee unanimously, bipartisanly voted to release this memo, and Trump has stymied it. Like, he's not releasing it.
Which is dumb.
Yeah. So we don't get to see yet what the Republicans are saying. Well, and the thing is that he's making the claim that he's stopping it from going out because of reservations brought up by the FBI and the Justice Department.
Also raised that about the Republican one.
And they were the same objections.
Yet he released that with no qualms. Yeah, dumb. Anyway. So there's definitely a political slant. He's doing it for political reasons.
He really is.
None else.
Well, and Nunes, from what I understand, has been prone to believing conspiracy theories on top of that. So that's nice. It's exactly what you want from a representative in the U.S. government. Okay, so it came out a couple weeks ago, too, that Trump has ordered the Pentagon to prepare a military parade like the ones we see in Europe. This based on the Bastille Day parade that he saw when he went to France last year. And so this means, like, pulling out all of the guns.
Rolling down tanks, Pennsylvania Avenue, and...
That's just disappointing.
This is stuff we don't do in America, and we usually, like, Americans associate this with, like, North Korea or, like, China or Russia.
Because North Korea really did have a parade where they,
right before the Olympics. It was
right before the Olympics.
Really bad timing.
Or really good timing. It was also for one of their holidays. So, like, where they rolled out they have nukes on trucks, which is, like, the most unstable way to transport nukes. And, like, they're very precise military, and like they do military parades. But you say we associate this with communist parties and like countries like North Korea. This is true, but it also happens in European countries in Europe, like France.
At least when I think of it, I think we mostly hear about it happening in like China and North Korea
and autocracies. Yeah.
So, and it's also going to cost millions of dollars, so people have varying opinions on that. A lot of people think it's a waste of time and money, but...
It is. But it'll make him feel good because he's the commander-in-chief.
Yeah. They're going to try and spin it as, like, celebrating the troops, but I don't know if that'll fly.
We can celebrate the troops in other ways. Like, giving them money so they don't have to be on food stamps.
Yeah. Anyways. All right.
It's fine.
Do you want to tackle the next one?
Oh, no, I want you to.
Oh, okay. So this next story has been plaguing the White House for like a week and a half, which, in like a PR communication standpoint, this only should have been like a 2 or 3 day story, but just the way that this White House handles things, or more mishandles things, just perpetuates the news cycle even worse. So, there was a member of the administration staff named Rob Porter, who was staff secretary, and from what I understand, that role is like passes all documents to the president. It's kind of like their gatekeeper a little bit. Like all documents and papers and everything the president sees goes through this person. And so naturally a lot of that stuff is classified information. So they're supposed to have a security clearance. Well, supposedly this man had an interim security clearance because during his security background check by the FBI, they found that like there were allegations that he had abused his previous wives.
Yeah, 2 ex-wives.
2 ex-wives.
That had evidence of being abused by him, too.
And now here's where it gets hairy, because the White House has said one thing, and the FBI has said another. So, supposedly, the White House, and this all kind of blew up on one day, like last week. Yeah. Rob Porter was fired. The Daily Mail picked it up. That's how it came out. The Daily Mail, a British publication, picked this up. They had pictures from the ex-wives. One of them had a black eye.
Yeah.
And it was very damning.
Uh-huh.
Photographic evidence. And then, so the White House had to respond. Yes.
Side note, just real quick. Rob Porter is actually a former Hatch and Lee staffer.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Who moved over. He was a BYU professor.
He was?
Uh-huh. Like he...
Oh.
Yeah.
I know he had ties to BYU, but I didn't know he was a professor.
I swear that's what I read. I may have read it wrong.
But I know he has
ties to BYU. I don't know for sure. Duh. I'm messing with
he
some sort of
something at BYU.
It's something BYU. And he, unfortunately, in this case, he was practicing LDS. I think he still is, but which makes the story even all the more disappointing. Just because, like, when you've lived by those covenants and make those covenants, like, you hate to hear stories about people who have disregarded them. But anyway, back to your story.
So Sarah Huckabee Sanders, like, as a press secretary, naturally, like, she was the one taking the lead as the voice. Like, that's her job. Supposedly, Rob Porter, and so many things have happened, and they've changed their story. I've really lost what they originally said. They originally it came out that, like, Chief of Staff John Kelly, like, encouraged him to stay on, even though these allegations surfaced, and, like, tried to stick by him. Also, Rob Porter was reportedly dating Hope Hicks, the communications director, and longtime Trump aide.
Who's also been in hot water the last 2 weeks, but we're not going into that at all.
So, that was interesting. So, the original White House message was that they stood by him. Then the pictures came out, and it was like, it was a point of no return. Like, they would be dumb to still support him after that. Yeah. So, then they came out and said that he had left his position, and then Sarah Huckabee Sanders did a non-condemnation of domestic violence, which, if you really listen to what she said, she didn't really condemn it at all. And then the president, like, didn't say anything about this on Twitter or on camera. He had several opportunities to denounce domestic violence.
Something on Twitter about, like, allegations and believing allegations.
That came out a little bit later.
Oh, later.
The first thing he said when he asked about a photo op is that he wished Rob Porter well in his future endeavors. That was the first thing the president said, and everyone was like, wait, like, what about the women? What about domestic violence? Yeah. And, like, silence on that topic. Then Sarah Huckabee Sanders read this boring typewritten statement like, I denounce violence, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, one of those boring dictated statements that, like, really nobody listens to. She read one of those that was supposedly dictated to her straight from the president. Which,
there's no way with his rhetoric anyway.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But then all the reporters like, well, when are we going to hear about the president on domestic violence? And, like, granted, if you know Trump's history about women and, like, violence, he has a really bad history. So, like, naturally, those questions abounded. And, like, with the whole Roy Moore thing, whole nother thing. He has a history of not believing women and supporting accused, like, abusers.
Yeah.
So Sarah Huckabee Sanders said, he doesn't need to talk because I'm his spokesperson and I've said it. And then everyone's like, no, that's not how it works.
That's not how, yeah.
Like, he had plenty of opportunities to say about it. He tweets about so many things a day. He could have sent out a tweet like, no, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, that's
not buying it. So that's the whole thing. And the White House totally dropped the ball and just totally, I can't even think of the word.
Botched.
They botched it. Yes, they totally botched their response to this. And they're still facing questions about this. And it's like going on 2 weeks.
Well, and then right after Rob Porter, there was another staffer who was
a speechwriter
let go because of domestic abuse allegations.
Yeah. And then Trump tweeted, like, people's lives are being ruined because of, quote, mere allegations.
Yeah.
So he quoted that. And then finally, like, days later, he said at a photo op, like, I denounce violence. I denounce domestic violence. And he's finally said something about it.
Yeah.
But it just looked so bad. So there's, like, the communication standpoint, PR standpoint. But there's also, like, the security standpoint. Like, how did this man have an interim security clearance for like a year?
Well, the interim security clearances they're not based on a background check. You can give them to anyone in the White House.
Yeah.
And you could actually have a staffer on an interim security clearance, from what I have been reading, for up to the whole 8 years while you're there. The problem is, and this is, I mean, we're functioning on a White House full of interim security clearances, because Jared Kushner also doesn't have a security
Ivanka,
clearance.
and Sarah Huckabee Sanders all supposedly only have interim security clearances.
Also, the Kushners have racked up like a whole bunch of new debt since they joined the White House, so that's interesting. But like this whole security clearance thing, like you have a White House full of people who are handling very, very classified information every day, and they don't have the clearance to handle them at all. Like, it's just frustrating and also really demoralizing and scary.
Yeah. And then I really should move on real quick. The FBI director, Christopher Wray, said...
a Republican appointed by Trump.
Said at a House... Was it a House or Senate hearing? I think
it was the Senate, like, update from all of the intelligence heads.
So it was on the Senate side. Yeah. He said at a Senate hearing that the FBI completed their investigation and they gave all the information to the White House last year, whereas the White House said that the FBI hadn't given them all the information and they just barely learned about it. So who do we believe?
Yeah, because at this point it looks like John Kelly's protecting Rob Porter.
Yeah, it did look like that. And then so the White House was spinning this whole thing, and then the FBI director said, actually, we completed our investigation and gave them all our information.
Yeah.
So then it was like, ooh, that doesn't sound good.
Interesting. Yep. Okay, moving
That's a
right
whole
along.
thing, and I'm sure it'll still go on.
Okay, moving right along. So last week, Nancy Pelosi gave an 8-hour and 7-minute speech on the floor of the House. It's called a filibuster, except the House doesn't really have filibusters, so it's a weird thing.
It's like a weird rule, wasn't it?
It's a weird rule. It's called a miracle minute, and basically for the minority leader, and I think there's somebody else, but in her case, the minority leader, can hold the floor as long as she or he would like, as long as they can keep talking. So basically it's a filibuster. So she couldn't leave the floor. She couldn't sit down, so which means she couldn't go to the bathroom. She couldn't sit down, she couldn't drink, she couldn't eat for the whole time she was doing this, so she just has to do it for as long as she can. Unless somebody asks her a really long question, then she can sound while she answers it. But she had this whole binder, all of these papers of DACA testimonies and stories from Dreamers, and she was on the floor for 8 hours and 7 minutes. And when she passed the 6-hour mark, there was a note from the House historian who said that this is the longest speech on the floor of the House for at least since at least 1909, from some senator who was filibustering sanctions that they were imposing. And so it was just this huge thing, and really it was like this, her goal was to get the speaker to commit to having a House debate on immigration, because Brian hasn't committed to doing that. It's largely powerless at that point, because this was right before they needed to spend a new spending bill before the government would shut down, right? And that wasn't her point. She didn't want to, she didn't vote for that bill, but she also didn't want to delay that bill. She wanted to have the government have spending, and the bill that was going to the vote actually was a pretty reasonable deal for both ends, and kind of robbed the Republicans because they were trying, in some ways, and in other ways, it robbed the Democrats. So, a regular bill. And anyway, so she, her point was to make a point to Paul Ryan that, dude, you need to give us the opportunity to have a debate on this, because the Senate has already promised to have a debate on this, which, by the way, failed this week. It's fine. Their open debate on immigration failed to pass anything. They had 5 measures and nothing passed. So anyway, so it was just this huge thing. It was amazing. She was wearing these heels that she just stood there for 8 hours and talked about. Yeah. And it was I tuned in for the last 10, 20 minutes, and they were really wonderful stories. I tuned in right as she was talking about a student from UVU, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was cool. Okay. Moving right along again. So that night, Rand Paul in the Senate filibustered. He legit filibustered, ran out the clock, because there's some rule in the Senate that as long as one senator doesn't vote to close debate, then it stays open and blah, blah, blah. And he was like super upset. He's a libertarian, so he's like conservative leaning and but different. And I like the nuances of libertarians escape me, but they're different.
His sticking point was about deficits.
Yeah, it was about the deficit, and that's fair because it's a big thing. Anyway, so he was talking and talking and talking. He finally ran out the clock, and the government shut down at midnight, Thursday night. By 5 a.m. our time the next morning, or 5 a.m. Washington time, can't remember which one. 5 a.m. at some point in time, the government opened again because they were able to pass the spending bill. It was the same spending bill that they had on the docket the night before, but they passed it. And it passed pretty well in both houses. It funds the government until September 2019. And it's quite the bill. But it funds CHIP for the next 10 years, but it does not mention the Dreamers at all. So there's that. There's a couple more nuances. Don't have time for them. And then...
what do we got?
We're going to flip these two. So first thing is that this morning... So we talked... I don't know if we talked about this, but Mitt Romney said, like, on February 1st, on February 15th, I'm making this big announcement. And we were like, okay, why did you tell us?
Such a weird tease.
Yeah.
2 weeks out.
So on the 15th, he said, out of respect for the Parkland shooting, which we're going to talk about a little bit later as part of our soapbox, because of that shooting, which happened on the 14th, he postponed his announcement until today, the 16th, and it was like the weirdest announcement. I didn't actually watch the video,
I watched the video.
He announced, okay, but see, my problem is that he announced at 6 a.m., 6 a.m.
It's like, what?
Mountain Standard Time. And I was talking to someone about this, and I was like you'd think he was like trying to cater to a Utah audience because that's who he wants to represent. And they were like, well, it was 8 a.m. in Washington. And I was like, I know, but still.
If you watch the video, he said the word Utah like probably 30 times. Like, it was like every other word it seemed like was Utah. And I was like, okay, like we get that you're running from Utah, like, whoa, Bessie.
Yeah.
That was my biggest impression. Was like, wow, you said the word Utah like as much as you could.
Well, he's trying to establish himself. Yeah. But yeah, I was still like 6 a.m. Mitt, 6 a.m. I am only up because I have to be.
Yeah, you know, I really don't know why. From like a communications PR standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
6 a.m.
People are asleep, but
6 a.m. is not a high traffic time.
I guess maybe what they were trying to go for is like have the news like have it really early in the morning so people are talking about it like all day, and so like I don't know.
Yeah.
Because like if you post something like on a Friday afternoon,
nobody's
gonna look
anything.
at it. It's called the Friday night news dump for a reason because like nobody
trash
paid attention.
Day.
So maybe their point was like so journalists had enough time to like know about it and like write stories about it and get it out.
You can
there.
do that
So,
at 10 on Friday though, and you're fine. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
I
fine.
don't know either. That's my only thing. I was like, maybe they wanted it to be like a thing all day.
All day.
I don't know.
Well, we've been talking about it all day. So, the other thing that happened today was that there were 13 Russians indicted for involving themselves in the 2016 elections. And I was listening to the NPR Politics podcast about this right before I came over, and I didn't get to finish. It's actually really good. So, I would suggest you go listen to that. I'll link to it in the blog post. But basically, like these Russians they paid two people to create a cage. Like this was one of the ones that sticks out. Okay, so at a Trump rally, they paid someone to create a cage because a lot of this they did from Russia. They just were like influencing people. Anyway, okay, so they paid somebody to make a cage, and then they paid someone to dress up like Hillary Clinton and stand inside the cage at a Trump rally. Like,
wow.
And they used Facebook ads and a whole bunch of other things, and a lot of the narrative goes back to 2014. And the NPR people were saying that like this indictment isn't like we're not gonna extradite these Russians to America to stand trial. It's just mostly like a
statement. We're
indicting you so that we can point out how much we know and show you what this special counsel is doing and the FBI is doing. So that's nice. Okay, So we're going to move on to the soapbox now. And the soapbox starts with a really, really sad story from this week. So on Wednesday afternoon, so Valentine's Day, 5 minutes before school was supposed to let out in at a high school in Florida. It has a really long, complicated someone's name. I can't remember whose it is.
Named after like a really cool person who has a really cool history, but I don't know what that history is.
Yeah. Anyway, so the 5 minutes, the fire alarm gets pulled, and everybody's really confused because there was a fire alarm earlier in the day. There was a drill. And so they're starting to usher kids outside, and all of a sudden, there is a report of gunfire, and there is a 19-year-old gunman who was recently expelled from the school, and so teachers are trying to get kids back inside the school or send them into the community away from the fire to get to somewhere else safe. And he had like an AR-15, so he was like, and this is just rapid fire, like a gun created for the Vietnam War. And so in the end, 17 people died. A couple of those were teachers, several of them were students. And we were all talking about early how we've seen movies or videos and tweets and texts from the people who were there. Like this is a bunch of the kids went from 14 to 18, and we're seeing tweets and things from that, and they're just really disturbing, just because like this young man went in and started killing people, and kids were shoved in closets by their teachers, and locked classroom doors and away from windows, and it's just kind of terrifying to watch those things.
And this segues right into our soapbox,
right?
Which is gun control.
Yeah,
because as naturally after every mass shooting, there's always a big push and rally for more gun control.
Right, but this time it's coming from the victims.
It is,
which is fascinating. Like these kids.
What's frustrating to me, and a lot of people get frustrated, is like nobody is like calling for the Second Amendment to be abolished. Like, right. Nobody is calling for all guns to go away. Like, that's never a part of the conversation, but that is always what like super right-wing people always jump to. Like, well, you want to take away our guns. No, that's like not what we were saying. Obama never rallied or like wanted that. Like nobody, like no mainstream politician has ever like said no guns.
What they want are better background checks, better mental health screening, guns to be kept safely if they're kept in the home, that are away from children and away from young adults who are unable to take care of these things. So this young man, the first thing to know about this is that in Florida, you can't buy a handgun unless you are 21 and pass a background check, and there's a 3-day waiting period. But you can buy an AR-15, a military grade rifle. Right. You can buy that at 18. There's no waiting period, but there is a background check.
That, like, it's mind-boggling to me that someone can buy a military grade rifle, but they can't buy alcohol. Like, you have to be 21 to buy beer, but you can buy a military grade rifle with, like, almost no strings attached. Like, that makes zero sense to me. The kid, like, legally bought this gun last year, and he was 18 or 19.
He had a troubled past, which is normal for a lot of them. A lot of people who have this problem. So he lost his mom last year. He was adopted early on because his mom couldn't like take care of him appropriately, and then he was passed off to another family. And just like this whole thing. And now his lawyer's like trying to pass him off as a broken kid, which is true. But also, this man is 19. He like has some of that adult decision capacity to be able to make those decisions. You can't pass him off as a kid. Some of these people you can pass off as broken kids, but I don't think that you can do that for Cruz.
What's sad too is the only thing that the Trump administration has done on gun control grounds is they repealed an Obama era rule that made it harder for people with mental health history to get guns. Yeah. Like, they made it easier for people with a mental health history to buy guns. Like, that makes no sense. And now Trump, of course, is, like, saying we need to do stuff about mental health.
Right.
It's like, dude, no. You made it easier for people like him to get guns.
Right.
Which makes no sense.
Right.
And another thing that frustrates me is after, like, Las Vegas and everything, the Trump administration always says, now's not the time to talk about policy. We'll talk about it later. Well, guess what?
Don't politicize these deaths.
Later never comes.
Later never comes.
It never comes.
And it's the
so
victims who are saying things. Yeah. Like the people who sat in their classrooms and were scared that they were going to die. And not only that, I was listening to an interview from one of them, and she was saying that, like, she always wanted to have a gun, and that was going to be the thing, and now she doesn't even want a gun in her home. This is something that's really hit home for people. And the thing that really bothers me is that there are two really effective lobbies and lobbying groups in Washington. One is the Israeli coalition. They're, like, really powerful, and there are problems with that, but I don't have as many problems as I have with the power that the NRA wields. Like, the fact that the NRA can impact gun policy to the point where we don't have a gun policy is a problem to me, because some of the most compelling arguments I've seen after every single shooting, and I hate that I have to say that, like, Parkland was the 18th shooting in 2018, and we're in mid-February. Okay, so the most compelling arguments I've seen are people are saying, like, you know, you always have those arguments that are like, we always blame the car, or we always blame the drunk driver, not the car, or whatever, blah, 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 blah. So why are we blaming guns, not whatever? So the argument is that we regulate alcohol, we regulate the substances that you could use to make a homemade bomb. Like, we regulate all of these things because we've seen that the damage that they inflict, but the one thing we don't regulate is guns, and those are inherently destructive, right? Like, they're like, alcohol in certain measures isn't destructive. Like, it's only when you get to too much that it's a problem, and we regulate that, right? We don't let you get you're not supposed to get behind the wheel of a car. You're not supposed to do this, that, and the other, but we regulate it. We don't regulate guns as the way that we need to, and the NRA is a big reason why that is, because they are so powerful, and they are the money out behind a lot of representatives and a lot of congressmen, and it gets to the point that, like, when are you listening to money rather than people? Because we have lost so many lives to gun violence. I think it's like 168 deaths every 2 days from gun violence in the United States. And we're like the most developed country, and we're still facing this problem. Like, you do not see this in any of the other the other, like, big countries. Like, you don't see this in Australia, Canada, Europe, anywhere in Europe. You don't see this you don't really see this in China, not that we would really hear about it. You don't hear about this in Japan. Like, this is a problem that is unique to the United States, because we're not a country at war. Like, you would expect gun violence in, like, the Middle East, because they are currently at war, and that's wartime violence. We don't have wartime violence here. And we have kids who are getting PTSD from inner cities where they are hearing gunshots every night, and they are kids who come out of, like, some of those inner city gangs have as bad PTSD as soldiers. Like, that's a problem. Like, and that's not to mention school shootings.
And to go off of your point, like, this doesn't happen elsewhere in the world, The Onion, so the satirical, like, news site, they're satirical, so it's, like, all fake, but they, like, their posts are always, like, making fun of a current situation. So every time there's a mass shooting, they always post the same article with this headline: "No way to prevent this, says only nation where this regularly happens." And, like, it's true. You've probably seen there's lots of graphs on, like, the developed world and, like, shootings, and, like, the US is, like, far and away more than all the others, and it's true. It's sad. And I'm pessimistic. I don't think any gun control is going to happen.
No, it's not.
If nothing happened after Sandy Hook, which, like, first graders died, like, that was, like, so tragic, and nothing
and the
happened.
fact that people turned it into a conspiracy theory.
And after Las Vegas, when the NRA supported a gun control measure, which, if you know anything about the NRA, that is, like,
never happens.
Incredibly rare.
Never.
So the fact that the NRA supported regulating bump stocks and it still didn't happen,
Yeah.
I'm pessimistic. I don't think anything's going to happen. And we're just going to still live this same world where every time we're shocked and sad and outraged, but you know what? Nobody does anything about it, and
Right.
we just move on in the same status quo.
This is the most deadly school shooting since Sandy Hook. And Sandy Hook, we lost, 20 people?
It's like
20.
In the 20s.
Yeah, it was in the 20s somewhere, and this is, like, right behind it. So, deadly school shootings, not deadliest shootings, because I think Las Vegas had a higher death count. It's just, it's frustrating. Like, I'm friends with a mom in my home, at home, and she posted on Facebook today, like, kind of satirically, but also, like, really, she dropped off her kindergartner, and she said, I hope she comes home, you know, like, I hope that there's no mad gunman that goes to my kindergartner school. And, like, that's real. Like, we have to worry about that now. We have mothers and fathers who have just lost their children. Like, again, this isn't, like, the first time. This isn't the first time. And the worst texts to me coming out of here are the texts from people who have died that are texting their parents and being like, I love you. I don't know if I'm going to come out of this. So, I don't know. Like, the fact that we have to read those things is enough reason and enough purpose for me, at least, to say, okay, we need to change this. And I don't know how we do that, because it has become so commonplace now. And I don't want to say that because it's not commonplace. Like, it just has become so, it happens so often that I think in some ways we've become immune to figuring out how to fix it, which is disappointing.
The hard thing is the real reason, the real way to fix it is by living Christ-like lives, where we're reaching out and we're befriending those who are lost and lonely.
Yeah.
You know, so we're not getting kids in the situation where they're abandoned and growing up in broken houses and feeling like there's no hope in the world. But until we can get our crap together and actually, like, live decent lives and care for other people, this is going to keep happening.
Yeah. Yep. Well, on that happy note, I think we'll call it a night. We'll see you next week.